Alison, Rosen is your new best friend. Alison, with her the good times never end. Alison, Rosen, doing the wavy pencil pants again. Alison's your new best friend.
Hey everyone, hi, hello. Welcome to another episode of Alison Rosen is your new best friend. I'm very excited to bring in my guest today. But first, I must chat with producer Tony Thaxton, fill him in on the new insects in my bathroom and possibly other stuff. Hello, Tony. How's it going?
It's going all right. I have a little bit to add to that myself.
Oh, no. By the way, instead of pretending that we're going to have like an open chat about whatever's going on in our lives, I felt like I was just going to cut to the chase and call it for what it is, which is bug talk. So anyway,
I mean,
what's going on?
At this point, it's pretty much what I expect, yeah. But
I was having there was a good stretch where there was nothing. I was like, oh, whatever they sprinkled in the crawl space worked. I am blessedly millipede free. And then in the last 24 hours, as if timed for the recording of this show, I found like 6 of them, and 3 were in the bedroom. This is a new development. 1 on the wall, 1 on the carpet, and 1, don't let Bean from Kevin and Bean hear this, smushed into the carpet. So that's disgusting. And then I was like, well, at least they're not in the bathroom. And then I saw a few in the bathroom, and I did pick them up and I carried them outside. And I thought, who works for who in this bathroom? Huh? So I don't know what's going on. But then I had a new fear this morning. And I thought like, okay, I'm on top of it. I'm not freaking out. I'm picking them up, moving them outside after being shamed by a bug lover. But what if I were to step on one with my bare foot? That is disgusting and horrifying. And then I was like, now that I've had the thought, I feel like it's going to happen. And so now that's my new, like my whole life has meaning. I've been feeling a little at sea. What am I doing? We're reentering society. Who am I? What matters? But now it's like I've got to focus. And my whole focus is not stepping on a millipede with my bare foot. So it's given me a sense of purpose. What's been going on with you, Tony?
well, first of all, you should be like me and just wear shoes all the time. And then you're not going to have to, it won't be as gross.
Yes, I don't, in the same way that I'm not going to hop out of bed and take a shower like you do with my shoes on. I don't think I can become shod all the time, but I do wear socks most of the time. But there is
that's at least a little protection there.
Yeah, but it's in the bathroom where the bare feet happen because I'm like in or out of the shower. Are you just like step out of the shower straight into your loafers or whatever it is you wear?
My loafers, yes, my penny loafers.
Your hush
come
puppies?
on. Yes. I mean, more or less. Like I just, out of the shower, get dressed, shoes are on right away.
So why. Are your socks in the bathroom with your shoes?
No, the shoes aren't in the bathroom. I mean, I'll get dressed and then, then I'll come out to the living room or whatever, and that's when I'll put the shoes on.
So there would be time for you to step on a millipede before you've put your shoes on.
Technically, yes. There would be a few seconds there. And what I would not step on would be a millipede because, let me tell you, this also involves the shower the other morning.
I feel like I'm going to want to guess.
Oh, okay.
So, but tell me, but leave some hints in there.
Oh, boy. I'm trying to figure out how to give a hint with this. So I'm taking a shower.
Okay.
And I look up and the bar for the shower curtain is, and then suddenly I see something scurrying across that bar.
Oh, well, that I know what it is. I suspect I know because scurrying is only something a mouse does.
Oh no, it's not. Oh. It was not a mouse.
Okay,
it's insect. It's insect.
Okay.
And the big clue is I feel like it's the notorious gross one that no one
cockroach.
Wants. Yeah.
Oh no, because those are clicky. Like it clickety clacked across your bar, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the shower was on, so I couldn't hear that. But I will tell you, after then it disappeared and I had no idea where it went. Then that evening, I heard some clicking and kept seeing it walking around. And then I would try and do something about it, and then it would get out of my reach.
So just
I eventually
one.
got him, though. Just one. And I eventually got him.
How?
I had a plastic cup, and I basically saw him, and then I eventually got that cup over him.
And then did you
slid.
take him outside?
I might have put him in the toilet.
Oh, alive? You drowned him?
Well, he was on his way out. Let's just say. Let's just say my cup placement was not perfect when I set it down.
Yeah, I see. So you maimed him via cup.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm not fazed by that part.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gross, but I don't want the gross thing in my house. So
No, they are pretty gross.
yeah.
I had one years ago, and I talked about it on the podcast because this is where I go to share my bug stories. And Kevin Rom, do you know who that is? He was on Mad Men. He played Ted on Mad Men.
Maybe if I saw him, yeah.
And my producer at the time, Gary, were like, oh, if you see one, you have a bunch. And by the end, they kept saying this. And then he like went like with his fingers, like crawled his fingers up me. And I was like, ah! Like I screamed. I think we have that on camera. I screamed.
Yeah, it made me very on edge of just waiting to feel it run across me or something. Yeah.
Tony, I feel like there was something else I was going to share with you. I know what I was going to share with you. And then we're going to bring in the guest. I'm going to make this fast because that suggested it was interesting. And in reality, it's going to be anticlimactic. Okay. Long story short, we have a big tree on our parkway. Do you know what a parkway is? This is a term I didn't know until I became a homeowner. It is the strip in between the sidewalk and the street. And it usually has grass and a tree, or sometimes people will pull out the grass and put pebbles. And the city owns it. So anyway, we have a really big, pretty magnolia tree that we do not own, but that we feel like we do because it's on our basically overhangs our house. So Daniel mentioned we should get a tree person to come out to trim some of these trees over here, and then also the magnolia tree looks like one of the branches is going to fall. And I just filed that away as something that I'm not going to think about. And then later, I looked out the window, and a branch that's normally hangs down to maybe 10 feet or something was all of a sudden 4 feet off the ground. And I was like, oh, I've never seen it like that. And then I was standing there watching it, and then all of a sudden this humongous crack, and then a whole big branch just boom, fell. And there was a person out there walking her dog. She was fine. We're very lucky that it didn't fall. It didn't destroy a person or a part of a house or a car or anything. But all the neighbors came over, Tony. It was the most exciting thing that's happened in Burbank in quite some time.
Yeah.
And then,
Tin Horn Flats aside.
It was almost as exciting as that.
Local reference there for anyone.
Yes. I like to get hyper local at times. Okay. Enough. But it's art. Burbank is so fast. I called a number last night. I called Parks and there's a website, the Burbank website. There's a thing you click on. It's are you having a tree emergency? And I was like, kind of. Called them. They said they were closed because of COVID. And then early this morning, the guys were here. So
tree emergency solved.
a tree emergency. That's right. Okay. I'm very, very, very excited to welcome to the show actor, podcaster, poker player. You know him as AJ from The Sopranos, and I was going to say Sopranos, but when I had Jamie-Lynn Sigler on the show, she's like, no, I think it's actually Sopranos. So now I know. He also co-hosts the very funny Pajama Pants Podcast with aforementioned Jamie-Lynn and Kasim G. Please welcome to the show, Robert Iler.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, welcome.
I could tell you've been working on that intro for a long time.
Yes, you should have seen the drafts that didn't make it. The stuff that, I forgot to include that he's handsome and funny and has an amazing Zoom background.
Hey, you said it.
I did say it. So how's it going? How are you doing?
Good. Everything's great. I mean, Jamie, who you've had on here, left LA and she's in Austin now, and it's terrible. Breaks my heart. I don't know how I get through the day. But besides that, yeah, everything's fine. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, you heard, I mean, you didn't hear because you only arrived just a moment ago. But if you had been listening the whole time, you would have heard I've got a little bit of an insect situation. And Jamie and I actually bonded. And by bond, I mean exchanged like one DM on Instagram because she has millipedes in her bathroom too. Except why are they, they're in Austin and they're here? What's going on?
Yeah, they're. I think millipedes are like the hottest podcast guests right now because we talked about them. We were talking about them last week for a while. She's got them in the bathroom. She had like a baby fox in her backyard the other day. She's got a lot going on here. I just have silverfish, which is wonderful.
Yes. Now, where are you with insects? Are you okay with them? Are you horrified by them like I am?
It depends if there's a girl around.
Okay.
If there's a girl around, I'm fine. If I'm alone, yeah, I fucking hate them.
And you have.
But when there's,
go ahead.
Sorry, no, when there's a girl around, you got to pretend like
Yeah,
it's all right. I'm not totally skeeved out by this.
I know there's a new girl in your life because I've been listening to Pajama Pants. I spent all day, or most of today. I've listened to a number of episodes, and anyone who enjoys my show, please, if you're not already listening to Pajama Pants, go listen to it. You will love it. It is, it's three friends chatting, and it's so good and entertaining. And like, there's, once you're in, you need to know what's going to happen. Like, I'm going to have to ask you about your farts in a minute, but let's talk about your lady.
Yeah, it's, it's interesting. For 3 years before this, I was just kind of out of the whole dating thing. So yeah, I thought it would be a good idea for me to not have sex for like a year and not date, not anything. Just I was trying to work on myself and change a lot of stuff about me. I got sober like a while back, and some people get offended when you say sober and you still smoke weed, but to me, I'm sober, compared to how I used to be. But I'll smoke weed occasionally. So yeah, I didn't want to date for a year or have sex. And then in that year, I moved to Vegas. Like at the end of that year, I was living in Vegas, and I was like, I don't think after taking a year off, I should fall off of this in Vegas with like some girl who's here for a weekend. Because I'm like, then what was the point of all of it, So I was like, I had another 6 months in Vegas. I was like, I'll do this for another 6 months. I'll go to, or however long it was, and I'll go to LA because I knew I was going to move to LA. And then when I got here, I was like warming up to LA, and I was like, yeah, I'll date. And then Corona hit. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, I was in a very small pod with just the people who I do my podcast with, basically, and a couple of other friends. And so me and Kasim, who is on the podcast, we went to San Diego about 3 months ago or whatever. And he's like, we're talking about getting on the apps, and everyone's on the apps. And I'm like, I don't want to go on the app. It just feels like the worst part for me was like, I don't want to pick like 6 pictures of like, these are my best pictures. Like, this is where I look, and now I have to like write things that people, I'm like, this is all, like, I went through my phone and I had to go back about 4 years just to find like 4 pictures. I'm not like a picture guy. I'm just very like, it was really hard for me to just pull the trigger and get on it. But yeah, I was happy I did. I went, the first couple of dates I went on didn't work. And then this person, I met somebody, and it's, it's been good.
Oh, I have a lot of questions.
Yes.
Is it weird for you as someone who like I feel like America has a relationship with you because we watched you grow up on this show. But a prestige television relationship, not like Family Ties or something, but which I'm also a fan of. I'm making a joke. But is it weird for you to get on that app knowing that a lot of people are going to recognize you?
Kind of, not really. I think when it first came out, I felt that way, but I think now it's like everyone's on these things, and then you put Corona on top of that. It's like, where else am I going to be? And I also think I'm very lucky to me in a way, because I don't enjoy like fame and this kind of like, it doesn't feel good to me. Like red carpets, I hate all that shit. But if I'm dating a girl who's 30 years old, that means she would have had been watching Sopranos when she was 6, you know, like when it came out, or like 7 or 8 or whatever. So there's actually not a lot of women under, you know, women in general, but women under like 35 who know what Sopranos is, especially if they're not from the East Coast.
Right. So you don't like all the trappings of fame.
No. And just to talk on what you said, I've also had people write on there, you're such a loser. Like you're using AJ from Sopranos pictures, like blah, blah, blah. Like people who think it's not me. And girls have gotten like really like angry, like first message, because I also, Kasim told me, he's like, pay for the premium. I'm like, I don't want to pay for the premium. He's like, no, because then you don't have to scroll. You just see the girls who have already scrolled yes on you. So then like, yeah, I just started getting like these messages that was like, this isn't you, you fucking loser, like blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. It's like the only girls who recognize me like talk shit. Yeah.
Did you say, no, I am me to any of them, or did you just let it go?
No, I felt like, you know, the way that message felt wasn't how I wanted to start
Right.
what I was looking to, you know, if I was back in the day, like how I was just, you know, like young and partying and hooking up, that might've been like a funny thing, but I'm like, I'm looking for like, you know, a long-term kind of thing. I'm like, I don't want it to start where you're like, you fucking loser. Like, you know, I don't need that. Let's at least wait for month 2 or 3 till you're calling me that, you know?
Right. So are you still
A
acting?
fucking loser.
Are you a fucking loser? Why did you use AJ's
Yes.
pictures? Why not just pictures of yourself?
Right. Am I still acting? No, I started acting when I was 6, and Sopranos ended when I was like 22. And then I did a couple of things mainly to like get out of jury duty and like not really because I wanted to be acting. But I told my manager, like, give me 6 months off just to like chill with my friends and hang out. And basically that was like 14 years ago. Like I'm just like, he's like, oh, I got these scripts. I'm like, nah, I'm all right. You know, like I've done a couple of things because I've met people like at a poker table who are like, I have this script, and you start talking and you're like,
Right.
I know this is going to be cool, because I think like, since really my biggest, and you could say only experience, but with like steady acting was this 10-year thing. We got so lucky that we were with such amazing people, and the writing was amazing in this. And I have such a fear and anxiety of like, what if it sucked? Like, what if I hated all of these people? Like a lot of people who I know do, like they get these jobs or like I've gone on to do other stuff, and I've looked around, I've been like, oh, this is acting? Like I thought what we did on Sopranos was acting, where it was like, when they said cut, we all like went over to the couch and laughed, and we were eating and joking, and we all wanted to be together. And it was like, oh, I'm going back to my room. Come back to my room. Where I've gone and done other stuff, and it's like, holy shit. You know, you see like everybody comes together, they do a scene, and then they're like cut, and everyone just like goes back to their camper or trailers, and people are like upset that their camper isn't the closest one to the set. And you're like, when we did Sopranos, like literally I never heard one person talk about like what room they got put in, or they like, if it was like, hey, the toilet in my room is broken, it was like something we laughed about on set, you know? And then you go other places and you see people that are like, my toilet's broken and it's like, I don't know. I think, the fact that nobody was famous, really, like there were no big stars on our show when it started, combined with like, if you acted like an asshole, David Chase would kill you off. It was just a way of like and also everyone was from New York, which, you know, I tend to favor New York because I was born there and raised there and I love it. But yeah, there was just nothing. Like I only have good memories from doing Sopranos, you know, and I've done other stuff for 2 weeks and been like, man, if I was doing this for 10 years, I would be, you know, I would not be sober anymore.
Do you miss the craft of acting?
I do. You know, I think it wasn't always like I felt like, wow, like I'm really acting here and doing this. There was a lot of stuff where my character was just like, walk in, be an asshole, walk out. And I was like a 19-year-old asshole anyway. It was like, yeah, this is fine, you know, but the times where, you know, I had some scenes with James that like afterwards I was like, wow, this is what it's like to like really, it's like you feel like you did something different there, you know? Like I was like, man, I wasn't like, they're like cut, and I'm like, did we even just do the scene? Like because you don't know, you just get swept away, and it's really crazy when you experience those things. But I did find that in poker, you know, like when I went to play poker, and now that I'm doing the podcast, I think it's like what I don't like about acting, which is like, it's predictable. It's like stand here, eat this, say this, wear this, cut your hair like this, do this, don't grow the like you're very like is what I love about podcasting is it's the opposite. Like it's like, okay, the mic's on, let's go. And you don't know, you know, what's going to happen. And I've definitely, you know, there's probably like a handful of times on our podcast where I've laughed so hard I thought we were going to have to stop. Like, and then you leave something like that, like after, you know, an hour and a half or however long we spend there, and you leave and you're like, that was work. Like, how is that even a real thing, you know, where the payoff, I think the payoffs in acting are really huge, but there's a lot of sitting around doing nothing, like a lot. Like there have been days where I've gone to a set, sat in a camper for 12 hours, and they came in and they're like, yeah, we're not going to get to you today. Like, and you're just like, okay, like, you know, which again, it's an amazing job, you know, like you're getting paid great. When you love it, you know? Right. So it's like, if I'm on Sopranos and they come in 12 hours later and say you're not needed, I'll skip home. But if you're fucking miserable and you're with a bunch of people you don't want to, and then you show up and you're sitting in this like little room for 12 hours with, you know, and this is before, I haven't really done acting since like everyone has a phone in there, but like basically a computer in their pocket. So it probably makes, you know, the day go by a lot faster. But back when I was acting, it was like, there wasn't. If you were sitting in your room for 12 hours, like you're sitting in your room for 12 hours, you know?
Right. In general, do you get bored easily?
I think it depends. I think definitely when I was younger, I think now like I've gotten into meditation and yoga and things like this, and I'm like, no, I could go sit in a park for like an hour and just stare at the, you know, trees and think about how like grateful I am and blah, blah, blah. But I think, you know, before I got sober, yeah, like if you put me in a room for, you know, I didn't want to be alone with my own thoughts too much. You know?
Yeah. What were your substances and when did that all start?
So I probably started drinking and smoking weed when I was around 12. And then later, like maybe 18-ish, Coke started to become like, and the truth is, it sounds insane, but I never really liked Coke, but I did it every night for like 3 years or like 4 years or something because I loved drinking and partying and that. But I wasn't like, you know, I would hang out with people who like loved cocaine. And I'm like, I don't even know what the only thing cocaine does is like charge me for it. But like other people, it's like, it's so much and it alters their whole mood and this. And I'm like, oh no, this just makes it so I can, instead of stopping drinking at 4 a.m., I stop drinking 48 hours later, you know, and I loved that thing. I never wanted I never wanted the party to end ever. You know, I don't ever remember being somewhere and being like, I think I'm going to go. Like it was always like the lights coming on, them telling me like, you have to leave, like, you know, get out of here. And then it was like, all right, where are we going now? And where are we going after that? And the next place. But were you ever a party?
Yeah, I also, I guess I am. I don't say I'm sober really because I don't go to meetings. Although I have gone to meetings. And I never did the steps, but I did get a lot out of going to meetings. But people have been like, you left before the miracle happened, or you know, I don't know. Like I still someday I would like to do that. Like I'm very open to it, and I feel like it would have been good for me too. But I just, you know, I don't feel like drinking was really ever my problem. However, every bad decision I made came after I drank. And I just got to a point where I was like, I was doing drugs, which I was very not like okay with. I mean, I was enjoying it a lot, but I was like, I felt like this is not who I am, you know, like look at me, like, what have I turned into? Like, I was not raised to do this. I had DARE in school. Like, I'm risking my health. I don't think I really was, but I felt like I was. And I had so much shame. And then, I was making the worst decisions with relationships with guys. Like I would meet these guys who, I already liked guys where my friends would be like, that's the kind of guy you can have a crush on. You should not want him to be your boyfriend. And I'm like, I know, but I'm super into this bad choice of a person. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to date him. And then I would get drunk and I'd be texting him. And I mean, like I also wanted the party to keep going. So I just stopped everything years ago. So yeah, I'm relating a lot to what you're saying.
Yeah. Do you ever think that it's like you knew that you would never be like fully vulnerable with those guys, so that's why you went back to them? Maybe.
For me, I think it's like male attention, especially from someone. Oh, that's a good question. Let me see if I can articulate this. Male attention from someone who was never gonna like really see me clearly and like me for me was intoxicating. It was like a drug. I think that I was too immature and like I hadn't gotten far enough in therapy really to like be open to a real relationship. I couldn't even imagine, like my husband, my current husband, I've only had one husband, but my husband, I've never been drunk around him. Like I've never been altered around him. And that's the only guy I can say that about. Everyone else who I had dated before, I had always been altered when I was around them. And I just couldn't even imagine not being, because I was just too much of an awkward person and I was too nervous and I didn't really know how to date and none of it really made sense. And then I sort of felt more okay when I was a little bit drunk, even though I was like a very sloppy bad drunk. I look back on that and I'm embarrassed about who I was when I was drinking. But enough about me.
Well, it's it, because we are so different. Because when I remember the first time because then I got really into like Molly and like sometimes I'd fuck around with like ketamine, because when you did ketamine on like ecstasy, you were just fucking
yeah,
it's amazing. It's I don't want to say it's amazing because you don't want to get people doing that, but right. I had a good time. And I would do like, I did acid and shrooms and all this stuff, but it's like everything I ever tried, like when you said, oh, this stuff isn't me, like everything I ever tried, I was like, oh, this is who I am.
Oh,
like
interesting.
You were like, oh, this isn't who I am.
Yeah.
I was like, this is exactly who I am. Like all of it too, like drinking and standing on a couch and like screaming at the top of my lungs, or when I was taking Percocets and I was up to like 15 Percocets a day and I was melted on my couch. And it's like, yeah, this is who I am. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not that crazy guy on the couch, and I'm not the crazy guy standing on the couch, and then I'm not the worm laying on the couch. I felt like I was all of it, and I was just, there was never really, when I was 22, I quit drinking for 9 months because I couldn't stop doing coke. And I was like, I need to stop. Like I was
Were you doing it around the clock?
No. Only when I was drinking. But it became like, if I was working, I never did drugs, never drank anything. But it was like as soon as, and with Sopranos, they'd be like, oh, you have the next 2 weeks off. And it was just like party every night. I was the only friend of mine with his own apartment. So I was the only person in my friend group with their own apartment. So everyone would just come over. As soon as I woke up, I would have missed calls and I'd be like, yo, what's up? They'd be like, yo, we're on the block. Like, I'd be like, all right, come through. Start smoking weed, order some food. Next thing you know, drinking. And then it's like the drugs start going down. And then it's, 3 days later and I'm going to sleep. And then all of a sudden you sleep for, 24 hours, 36 hours, whatever. Like you wake up in between, like take something to go back to bed. And it was just all like, but I don't know. I think what happened was when I was young, I felt like there was so much of like, don't do drugs. Drugs are for losers. Like drugs are this drug. And then as soon as I did drugs, I enjoyed it so much. And I was like, oh, they're lying about everything.
Oh, interesting.
Like, I don't remember hearing like, well, here's why you shouldn't do drugs, because you become dependent on them and you become addicted. Then you wake up in the morning and you can't feel good without them. Like, I don't think that was ever explained to me
right,
in a real way. It was just like, you see this person in your family, you see how he acts, he's on drugs. Like, don't do drugs and all this stuff.
This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs, that commercial.
Right. Yeah. And it was like, and then as soon as I did drugs, like that first night I did drugs, I was like, oh my God, this was so much fun. Like what now is like, all I want to do is find out what else is out there and try everything and do everything, Right.
Yes. I do hear you on that one. Were there people around you who were worried about you?
No, I had all of my 95% of my really good friends were the guys who went home at 4 a.m., or 3 a.m. or meet a girl and leave at 2 and this. And then I'd call them the next day and they would say, like, my really close friends, they weren't drug guys. Like, like when the drugs came out, they would leave. So they didn't know, like, they would hear from me like, yeah, I was there for another 48 hours, or something like that. But I only really had like 1 or 2 real close friends who would go on like 3-day binges with me or like really just, gross. All the friends that I had at those times were the people who once the drug started, it was like, oh, call this person, and then they came around. And it was like, oh, they would never be worried about you because all they're doing is, they're in the drug game and wanting to party all night and this,
Yes, that's in my. For me, it was a short amount of time, but I was definitely hanging out with people that like were drugs not involved. I would certainly not want to be hanging out with these people, which sounds very judgmental. I just mean we didn't really have anything in common other than what we were, how we were passing our time at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds judgmental, but I could go even worse to the point where, like, if I was walking down the street and saw them, I'd cross the street if I was sober. Like I wouldn't even want to. There was no real. I don't even know, there was no real like substance there and this. It was just kind of like, oh, you can party for 2 or 3 days. So can I, let's hang out. Cause there's not a lot of us who aren't like insane,
Right.
Like a lot of people who would party for 3 days. Like I never got into meth, but like, meth were people who were like, yeah, I could party for 3 days too. And I was like, yeah, I would be scared of that, cause I'd be like, oh, if I ever do, like, I remember when everybody's like, you got to watch Breaking Bad. You got to watch Breaking Bad when it came out. And I wouldn't watch it because I was like, if they make meth look too good, I might be dead.
Interesting.
Like, like I was scared of that because I didn't, I had only seen what people who did meth looked like growing up. And I was like, man, I don't want that to be the same thing with heroin. Like I never did heroin because I was like, I think that's the end,
Right.
Like if I do heroin and I fucking love it, what am I gonna, what am I gonna do? But when I was 28, I took like 35 Molly for my birthday, and that was the last. I was basically like, if I come out so I took about 15 like right away, and then cut to like 3 days later, and I had over that time I had been taking like 1 hour ish, like just to keep things kind of cool and like feeling good and whatever. And when I woke up after going to sleep, I really felt like, oh my God, I might never be the same. Like, like I was fucked. Like I was, any noise I'd hear, I was like a dog. When you see a dog like flinch and like everything was like the lights were too bright and this. And I was like, I had already cause I went to Vegas for 2 weeks and I came home like a year and a half later or something like that. And I just like stayed and partied because I was like, oh, these people stay up for days, like they don't have like when I would be heartbroken when one of my friends would be like, all right, it's 4, I got to go, and it was like, I'd want to cry because it's like, no, we're pre-gaming, like hang out. But in Vegas, you could just party forever, and no one looks at you like, oh, that drunk asshole.
Mm-hmm. And that was after The Sopranos ended, right?
Yeah. During, Vegas was a lot of Molly, like just a lot.
So you took 35, which is, I'm right that that's like an insane amount, right?
Yeah. Especially the, and I think the thing is like a lot of people hear me say stuff like that and they're like, you'd be dead. And it's like, well, no, because I didn't wake up one day and take 35 Molly, right? Like when I was 23, 24, 25, I was taking, 6 a night, 7 a night, 8 a night. And then like, because it was my birthday, I was like, I'm going to pop 5.
I'm not a newbie. I worked up to this tolerance.
Yeah, respect this. Yeah. And I was like, it was my birthday. So I'm like, I got to the place we were going. And I was like, I'm going to take 5 so that when we get there, like I'm fucking on another level.
Yeah.
I took the 5 and like, a couple hours later before we left for the concert, I was like, I want another 5. Like I want to be on the moon, like in Madison Square Garden, And so I take another 5. And then I'm like, just in case I start going down or we end up somewhere else afterwards, I'm like, I'm going to take this ginger ale bottle and fill it with some tequila and put 5 more in there. Jeez. And I could just sip on that if, things start to go down at all. And right when we got to the door at Madison Square Garden, some guy, like I was on it. I'm like, everything is like you're just like vibrating your teeth
way?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. I was, but I don't obviously I don't recommend this. Don't do it to anybody. It's horrible. But I was feeling great. And I get to the door and somebody was like, hey. And it was just one of those moments where like you're on drugs and your heart just sinks and you're like this, you don't know why, but you're like, this is it. It's over. Like I'm in trouble or like it's the cops or whatever. And there's a security guy and he was like, you can't bring that bottle in. And it was the tequila. And I was so relieved that like I was still going into the concert and everything. I just drank the tequila with 5 more Molly. And by the time we were at my seats in the garden, I was fucking, I was just on a nut. Like it was real. It was crazy. It was really crazy. Yeah. And like I have photos of me from that night and it's like I have like sunglasses on and a scarf around my neck. And like you could just, you see me without even seeing my eyes and you're like, this dude's fucked up.
And then you woke up. Oh, wait, you said you woke up and you thought you might be changed.
Yeah, I was like, to quote Jamie's husband, he loves to use this word, I was rattled. Like I was just, everything was bad. I couldn't eat. If I tried to eat something, I would throw up. So this is Monday and it was my birthday. So this girl that I was seeing at the time was like, I'll take you to dinner on Thursday for your birthday. And cut to Thursday and I'm still like throwing up. Like I just feel like shit and everything is bad. So I'm like, I have to go to the doctor. I go to the doctor and my doctor is like, when is the last time you ate a vegetable? Like, and I'm like, I don't know, like there's broccoli and chicken and broccoli or whatever. Like sometimes I'll have that. I don't know. And he's like, yeah, you need to, cause I hadn't eaten anything. Like I couldn't keep anything down. He's like, go to this place, this juice place and just get like something easy, like apple, vegetables and whatever. And I'm looking at him like he's insane. Like, I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? And he's like, just trust me. So I go to this place, I get this juice and it was like, I felt like I was high. Like my body was just like taking all this stuff in and I felt so good. And that was like the first day of, just completely changing everything. And then I started doing yoga and meditation and working out and being in like wanting to be out in nature and then just totally changed. It just changed. It was crazy.
It was like the smoothie that changed your life.
It really was. Yeah. That's
So wait, was that the end of you using?
Yeah. That was 8 years ago. And then since then I've smoked weed. And
wow.
I actually had this really weird thing where I was out at dinner with a bunch of friends after I had like 3 years sober or whatever. And I got a soda water, and why can't I think of the name? Like club soda. Yeah. So my club soda. And when the waiter put the club soda in front of me, like we were on a rooftop and it's like a hot summer day. And like I took a sip and it was vodka soda.
Oh.
And all of my friends that I was with like freaked out. And it was like this whole big thing. It was like when something catches fire, and people are like, whoa, you gotta get it. It was like this big commotion. And I just I was single at the time. And like, I went home that night and I was laying in bed and I couldn't handle the uncertainty of wait, what would happen if because that was so crazy that I was I wonder I need to know if I have a drink right now, is it like dominoes where they just all fall and then it goes right back to whatever? Or because I really felt like I was over it. Like I was
right.
I know when you're an addict but I just felt like for me drinking, like I was done. I didn't want to feel like shit anymore. I didn't want to do this. We're like, maybe like, let's try a painkiller. Like that doesn't sound like a good idea, But I was like, I just have to know. So I called up my best friend and his girlfriend and I was like, yo, let's go to dinner tomorrow or whatever. And I was like, I'm just going to have a glass of wine with you guys because I need to know, like, I was never a wine drinker. I was like, I just need to know what's going to happen. And I was like, hey, we might have a fucking awesome night. Like I might have an awesome 3 days. Like if I do this, like I know where I'm at, where I stand with this stuff. And like, I took 3 or 4 sips of the wine and I was like, yeah, I think I am where I thought I was, And I was like, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to be drunk. And it was something that was really like, I think it wasn't more than like one day where I was sitting on it, but it was just a couple days where I was like, I don't like not knowing who I am in that way, because I really felt like I was this guy who could take a couple sips of a drink and be like, I don't want this. I wasn't the guy that everybody was like screaming like, oh my God, he's going to fall off the wagon. And I was like, they're talking about me. Like, I don't feel that way. That's not me. Like, I don't know. It was a really strange thing, but I had a couple sips of wine, didn't want anymore, like went home, nothing. And I had never been able to do that before. And, 3 or 4 times after that, I had been at dinner and somebody was like, this is a 1929, like, one of those things. And I was like, oh, I'll take a sip, and like took a sip and I was like, yeah, I'm just not interested in like doing that shit anymore. And again, like a painkiller, I think it'd be a bad idea. I think like, don't try that. But I really feel like I'm done, much like I was done with cocaine when I was 22 or 23. I like drinking it's not, I don't want anything to do with it anymore.
Had you planned for the 28th birthday to be a last hurrah?
Yeah, I planned on it to be like, hey, we're going to start chilling out. Not so much like, I'm done, but I was like, I don't want to keep, I was doing Molly like 2 days a week, and I was like, I can't, this is bad. Like this feels bad, like I don't want to keep doing this. And, yeah, but the problem was it took me coming back to New York, because that was right after I got back to New York from living in Vegas. And like when I was living in Vegas doing Molly 2 days a week, it was like, oh, you're only doing Molly 2 days a week, But then when I got back to New York, my friends were like, yo, you're doing Molly twice a week. Like, and I was like, yeah, so, and it again, like I would go on these benders, whatever. So it would be like, Friday, Saturday, I was doing Molly, or like Tuesday, Wednesday, I was doing Molly, but I was staying up the whole time, just doing it and drinking. Like, I remember there were people would talk about like, Andre the Giant would drink 100 beers and everyone was like, oh my God. And I was like, so like I could drink 100 beers. But what I realized was Andre the Giant would have a job, like work all day, do all this stuff. He'd get home and from like the 3 or 4 hours before he went to bed, he would drink 100 beers, where I would be partying from like Friday to Sunday,
right?
And I didn't have a job. I would sleep for 24 hours after that. From 23 or 4 until 28, and even before that, like my life was just revolved around partying.
Did James know?
No, he knew that I like to like go out and have a good time, but he didn't, because I was doing things like gambling, playing poker, where people were always come up to me worried about that, and I'd be like, why are you worried about that? Like I would go to casinos with people and see them play like blackjack and roulette. And I'd be like, oh, you're throwing your money away. Like you're just gambling or whatever, where poker is like a skilled game. You play against other people. You're not playing against the casino, where the casino, like,
right.
If you lose $1 million or win $1 million playing poker, the casino doesn't benefit. It's you do it from other people. So it's, people were always worried about me gambling, and nobody really ever was worried about me partying, because the only people who would see me party were people who partied.
So you said that you didn't want to be alone with your thoughts at that point. Like, what were you, if you were trying to escape something, what was it?
I think there was a lot of chaos in my life when I was young. And then when Sopranos hit and we'd go to these award shows and like all that, like everything was so crazy. And anywhere you went in New York, people were like, oh my God. And there's like all this attention and stuff that like when I didn't like it. And then when I got arrested when I was 16, I got a lot of negative attention. And it was like the most famous I ever was for like 2 months. It was like I was on the cover of the paper and it was like when you see pictures of like Kim Kardashian walking down the street and there's just like flashes everywhere. Like when I was like getting out of the fucking jail and like that kind of shit, it was like you couldn't even walk. Like all these people. And I remember that was the time where I was like, I don't want to be fucking famous anymore. Like I don't like this, but I love what I'm doing. I love Sopranos. I love being the only person in my like, you know, people I grew up around where it's, oh, you're making it out, you know, like do the, so it was a really weird tug of war. But I also think there was this like, you know, I really enjoyed sitting in the park with my friends, drinking like 240s, smoking a blunt and going home. But then when I turned 17 and it was like, we'd go to these nightclubs and I'd be in there and I'd be like, I fucking hate this. Like people are stepping on my shoes. It's noisy. You can't talk this. But then when I would drink and do drugs and stand on the couch and like scream the words to these songs and there were girls everywhere, it was like, this is the greatest place in the world. So I always admired like the rock stars and like that lifestyle. So I was like, oh, I thought that's what I'd want. But for me to actually enjoy it, I had to be fucked up, you know? So it was weird. And obviously like I had other, you know, shit in my childhood, whatever. But I was never, I think because there was so much chaos in my childhood, I was comfortable in the chaos, you know, like when we go to somebody would pass away and you go to a funeral and people go, all right, we're going to the bar, like in between the whatever. I'd be like, are you nuts? Like if I start drinking right now, like shit, like who knows? Like we're at a fucking funeral. Like I was never the guy when things were bad, I wanted to drink. It was always like, hey, if people were like, hey, we're going to have fun tonight. I was like, oh, well, the fun that I've had, like to reach that 100 level that I'm looking for is like, I could only be fucked up because the truth was real fun to me was like sitting on the couch with 3 of my friends laughing. But there was something about like, now I fully accept that. But when I was young, it's like, no, that's not enough. Like you're not doing anything, you know? And I feel like I get into that trap with like, now I might be too far the other way. Cause I get into the trap, like, with a girl where a girl's like, can we go and like do stuff? You know, like I want to do that. And I'm like, oh, but we had such a great time last night, just like joking around, sitting here. We watched a movie and this, but so yeah, I think I'm too far the other way where like, I just accept, you know, especially after Corona and, you know, but I didn't need Corona. I'm a dude who like, I like to chill now, you know, I'm very comfortable and I'm grateful and I'm happy and I'm, you know.
What was you mentioned there was a lot of chaos when you were young. What kind of chaos?
Yeah, it was just like a lot of family stuff, a lot of people drinking, a lot of, you know, I think my parents had me when they were young, you know, like 18. And I don't think, you know, I was 28 before I even realized there was like different, like I was dating this girl I remember and we got into an argument. And I said, you know, like it was right in the beginning of the argument where it's like, oh, where is this going to go? And she said something and I said back, like, your whole family hates you. And she was like, what? Like, and I was like, what? And she's like, and what I said to her a couple of minutes later was like, we're arguing. Like when you argue, you say whatever you want and then later it's okay. And she's like, no, that's not how life works. And I was like, well, that's how my whole life has been. Like that's what I grew up around, which was like, the fights in my house were real fucking crazy. And then no matter what happened, 3 hours later, it was like, you hungry? You know, or there was some sort of like peer, like you want to watch this thing and you're like, holy, but you know, now I see that as crazy where, you know, when I was 13, 14, 15, say you start to be like, oh, this is normal. Like this is how people fight. And that's just what I thought. And it took, you know, seeing how other people lived and seeing other people's parents and being like, oh, like in my family, every man in my family, it was like they couldn't wait to get away from their wife. You know, it was like that whole vibe. And I thought that's what a relationship was like, you know, like, yeah, that's the wife, you know, like the old school jokes of like the ball and chain or this, but that's how it was. It was like, oh man, you know, she's going away for 2 days. Like now I could have fun and be myself and this. And I remember looking at it from the outside and being like, well, then why are you together? Like, I don't understand. But then, you know, I'm sure if I never got Sopranos and never had a chance to go to a therapist, or if I never did that, if I just stuck in the ways of a lot of people who I grew up with, I would still think that was normal. And I would think people who were in therapy were the crazy people.
Yeah, I also grew up around a lot of rage and didn't realize how this is not how everyone's parents are. Like, this is like in my house, it was referred. Oh, that's just angry words. Like, angry words was like an accepted phrase in my house for saying something just mean and awful to someone that you then took back. Oh, those are just angry words. And it's like, no. So, yeah.
Where did you grow up?
Orange County, California.
Okay,
yeah. What about you?
New York City.
In Manhattan?
Yeah. So there's, there's The Gift of Imperfection. I think it's like Brene Brown. And she talks about like, it really like hit home for me when I heard this, but it's like people who go through like the trauma when they're young, they associate it with being young and vulnerable. So then when they grow up and they start to have relationships with people who make them feel vulnerable, they look at it as like, oh, I don't like that person.
Interesting.
Or I don't, that person's fake. Like, that's what I was told growing up. Like, really nice people, they're fake, because when you would be around really nice people, you'd have to let your walls down. Like, they didn't want to fight, so you couldn't fight. Where like, I knew people in my family who married people who they hated. And it was like, well, 15 years from now or 10 years from now, when they get divorced, they're just holding that, well, I never fucking loved you anyway. Like, that's all they're just holding that in their fucking back pocket, like ready to go. So they never have to be vulnerable again. And like, it's still hard for me, it's still, there's times where like, I still meet people who are really nice, and I'm like, what the fuck is this person's problem? Like, like what? Like, I'm like, what do you want? What are you trying? And it's like,
right, like, what are they trying to do?
Right, where that's just my defense mechanism, being like, whoa, like this person is asking about you and just being a nice person. It's really crazy. It's really crazy.
I think I'm pretty nice. Are you wondering what I'm up to?
Well, not so much now, because I think it's when people tell me that people are nice people, I accept it. It's when you first meet somebody and like at like a store, and they're like, "Hi, sweetheart, how are you?" And you're like, "What?" Like, but through friends, I will accept. If somebody tells me like, "Oh, this person's a really nice person," now I go in with positive thoughts.
Right. Well, listen, everyone. Alison Rosen's Your Best Friend is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Whether you're struggling with anxiety or depression, need help with relationships, or are having difficulty meeting your goals, online therapy might be for you. BetterHelp helps you assess your needs to match you with a professional licensed therapist. You can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. If you've listened to my show for any amount of time, you know how much I believe in therapy. I think that everyone can benefit from therapy if they're open to it, whether you have like big things you're working on or just like refining things. And BetterHelp is really great. And also they match you with a therapist. If you feel like that's not the right person for you, you can switch as many times as you want, no extra charge. So you don't have to feel like, oh, this is a commitment. What if I don't like it? What if because that's a very common thing people feel when they're starting therapy. Don't worry. BetterHelp has got you. And also BetterHelp is more convenient and more affordable than traditional therapy. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/bestfriend. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/best friend. And I also want to tell you guys about Raycon. Whether it's for work or play, a lot of us are going to be on the move again this summer. Thank goodness. So my advice to you, take your Raycons with you. I have been listening to a lot of Jesus Christ Superstar. I'm just in a real Jesus Christ Superstar phase. I can't stop listening to the album. And I don't want to be without my favorite hip new soundtrack. And Stop laughing, Tony.
I was thinking. Sorry, I got distracted. I was thinking of something else.
It's what all the young kids on TikTok, they're all setting their talks to Jesus Christ Superstar. And I listen to it on my Raycon wireless earbuds. You get crisp, powerful beats at half the price of other premium audio brands. Raycons look great and feel even better. They come in a range of cool colors and with customizable gel tips included for a comfortable in-ear fit. And they're built to go wherever you go with a quick and seamless Bluetooth pairing and a compact charging case. Listen up. Raycon's offering 15% off all their products for my listeners, and here's what you've got to do to get it. Go to buyraycon.com/bestfriend. There you'll get 15% off your entire Raycon order, and it's such a good deal you'll want to grab a pair and a spare. That's 15% off at buyraycon.com/bestfriend. Again, that is buyraycon.com/bestfriend. Okay, so Rob, you mentioned your arrest when you were 16, which I know like a tiny bit about, but what happened? What's the story?
I mean, I grew up in New York City, and it was like you hung out in the park, you know, and like I got arrested and like processed once. I'm shocked that was the only time I was arrested, but it's like you're in a park, you know, so there's like so much shit going on all over the place. And then, you know, unfortunately, I was drinking and not, you know, I don't even know how to fucking put it, but like
burglary, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't, you know, like I never touched anybody. I never said anything to anybody. It was one of those things where like I was in the park. I was with a group of people. Someone did something, and when the cops showed up, I was there with weed in my pocket.
Oh, that's
and it was like, and the kids who got robbed said he didn't do anything, like talking about me, and they didn't give a shit. And I don't know if it was because they clocked me from Sopranos, if they were just but they let a bunch of people go who were there, and they took 4 people in. And it was just fucking crazy. But again, it's like there was so much crazier shit that has gone down in the park while I was there that, like, you know, part of me was like, wow, you know, as fucked up as it is, like, it's a relief that this was the you know, like kids would fucking hit kids in the head with skateboards and like knock their teeth out. And this was just like shit that would go. I remember one time, like, this kid threw a fucking bottle and he didn't know that there was like 2 parents over there with a baby, and he threw like a 40 up in the air and it like oh my God. Just like the craziest shit would always go down there. And you know, yeah, it sucked. But again, it's one of those things where like it changed my life, because I was like, oh, now I have to not only be careful about me and what I'm doing, I have to worry about every fucking person who's around me. And that just started a thing too, where I was like, I can't be hanging out in the park getting fucked up anymore and just not being aware of what's going on. So I started hanging out with older people who had their own apartments. And I was like, okay, now I could get fucked up again. You know, I could hang out here.
I love that, like, the problem for you in this scenario was location. It was one of location. Was that so? Okay, so that's nuts. Was that accurately reported at the time? Because I don't think
there were people saying that I was smoking crack. That like I had like a gram, which anybody who doesn't know, like $20 worth of weed is like the size of, you know, 2 sizes. Like both of your thumbs put together, like that much weed, and a bowl to smoke it out of. And the cops came and you know, like there were reports. The one that pissed me off the most was one said, Robert was screaming from the jail cell, "Don't you know who I am?" And the truth was, which seems to now and it's funny because this changed my life too, because it was like anytime I saw anything after that, I was like, oh, that's a lie. Like they always say people say that, and I'm like, I've been around a lot of celebrities. I've never heard a celebrity say, "Don't you know who I am?" Right. But I did the opposite when I went there. I gave them a fake name. And like I tried to pretend like, man, I'm just like one of the kids like with these guys and trying to get out of it. And we were just like sitting there fucking quiet, like thought our parents were going to have to come get us or something, because we had just turned 16. And anytime you got in trouble before that, your parents came and got you. But now because we were older than 16, you got processed. And yes, and there was things saying, oh, I had a crack pipe on me. And like, listen, you hear me talk about drugs. I have no problem with it. I've never smoked crack. I've never held a crack pipe, you know? And then the other crazy thing that bothered me was the news team went around to all the bars in my neighborhood, and I was 16. And I think maybe I had been to one bar one time, but they were going to like bar owners, including a bar that was right across the street from my apartment. And they were like, yeah, he's in here all the time getting fucked up, and he's this and saying all these things about me. And I remember looking at it and being like, first of all, I've never been to this bar. There were some of the bars I was like, I don't even know where this is. Like, it was like some old timers bar where like, you know, like, no, I don't even know people still went in there.
Right.
And what was the point of my story? Oh, but the other thing was, I'm like, how are these guys saying they let a 16-year-old into their bar all the time on the news? Like, aren't they the fucking assholes? Like, well, I don't understand. There were people from my building on the news, and under their name, it would say childhood friend. And it was literally people who like I saw in the elevator, and they would be like, you know, they basically went around interviewing everybody. And then the one person they would get to say the fucked up thing is like, they would piece that together with like the one fucking bar owner, the one person in my building, the one this. And it just made me seem like the worst fucking guy. Like, and like, you know, I remember it was like childhood friend says like, doesn't know what his problem is. Like, and I'm like, I don't even know this person's fucking name. Like, and it just, it drove, like, it's being 16 and just having what happened to me happen was something that I was like, okay, you know, I fucked up. I understand. Like, I mean, I did hang out with the wrong crowd and whatever. But again, it's like, I'm 16. Where am I supposed to go? Like, where am I supposed to be at 9:00 at night on a Saturday? I guess in New York City, home? Like, okay, at 16, like, I don't really know. But, yeah, it was so crazy to see. And then I remember like that was a big part of when I was like I was never a person who was like, I want to be famous and I want to do all this stuff. But I remember that being the thing of like, I never want to even take my fucking picture again. Like I don't want to be around any of this shit. But luckily, you know, all the people from Sopranos right away, like reached out to me, reached out to the judge. They were like, this kid is nothing like, and like, you know, there's the obvious thing of like, why would he steal $40 from somebody with 4 other kids? So like he did this for $10, like, and he's like, I don't know. There was just a lot of shit. And like, you know, before that I had done like, things for like this Special Olympics where like I rode a bike like for all of this, and like no one ever said a fucking word about it, which is fine. Like I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't. Like I'm doing this for this thing, or like raising money for firefighters or police or whatever you're doing. And then it's like, as soon as I did this to see, it was like, oh, this is what people fucking want and care about. And like, I felt bad for my family, and like I have all younger brothers and sisters. I'm like, this is fucked up for them. Like I don't care. Like I could walk around the street, and because nobody ever, and this is before the internet, so it's like nobody ever said shit to your face bad, you know? Like you walk around your whole life and no one's ever like, you know, sometimes you get at like a bar, like, yeah, fuck you, or like Sopranos sucks. And you're like, yeah, okay, it's the best show on TV. But, you know, like, okay, sure. I'm going to say, like, what am I going to get upset with this guy? Like, you know, fine. But, yeah, I can't imagine now the shit people go through. I mean, I can because we have the podcast and whatever, but like dealing with, you know, people caring about like what people say on social media, it must be tough if you care, you know, because I don't care, you know, and I actually think like a lot of the stuff is funny, and I'm like, yeah, that's true, you know, like I see shit and I'm like, yeah, I do that, or like whatever. But, you know, I think being 36, I'm still young, but, you know, being 16 and having to deal with that, it must be crazy.
So does it really not bother you at all? Like anything you see podcast related or any social media critiques or anything like that?
Nothing bothers me about like when people say bad things about me. What really bothers me is when people say dumb shit and I'm like, oh, this is who I'm entertaining. Like this is who's watching this show. Like, I remember there was, because like, listen, sometimes people are like, you know, in the beginning, they're like, you guys are like, right after Corona, I think it was a big thing. Like, you guys keep cutting each other off. Like, why don't you let each other speak? And I was like, oh, thanks. Like, yeah, like for sure we do. And for people who are listening, that must suck. And like, I want to hear a lot of this shit. And, but like, you know, funny jokes I love. But I remember I said, we had, you know, our first episode had like 250 listeners, I think. And now we're like, you know, we're hitting, I think we averaged like 35,000, which is like, you know, wow, you know, it feels really, it's cool. But when we were around maybe like 1,000 people or something like that, somebody said something, and I was talking about like a sponsor or whatever. It was right when Joe Rogan signed a $100 million deal.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, well, if this, I go, they're going to have to give us more than Rogan. I go, I said, we're probably like a 200 million, maybe $250 million podcast at this point. And we just kept going with whatever. And somebody wrote in the comments, hey man, like, you think you deserve more than Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan, and started listing. This still gets me nuts. Like, I started to get fucking crazy thinking about this guy. They started listing Joe Rogan's statistics. Like, he gets 7 million viewers on YouTube alone. Then he gets this many million on here.
God.
He gets, this is his total number of views ever. And then they started like talking about my thing. I'm like, you're watching my pod thinking I don't know this? Like, you must be insane. Like, but like that stuff will stick with me. Like, I'll walk around all day being like, this guy thinks, like, I don't know if it's that people don't know when you're kidding, and that's the thing that bothers me, or that like, that's such a dumb thing. I can't really figure out why, but like people because here's the thing I think about when people talk shit, right? Is like, I think about when I was younger, or even sometimes if I talk shit about something now, it's like, you see the thing happen, you talk shit, and then you move on. And you're on to your next thing, where like people see the shit talk and they're thinking about it for hours and then days. And if they went and said to that person, like, when you said this on my video, it made me feel this way, like that person would be like, oh, what'd I say? Like, you know, like they don't remember it.
Right.
So it's like, why am I like, I know when I've said shit before of like, you know, there's been TV shows that I love where I'm like, I hate this character. And then if I hate that character, it doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I don't, if I might have said somewhere I hate that character and they heard it and they were upset, it would be like, why do you, again? Same.
I have that too. Like there are, you know, certain plot lines in the 4th season of, this is hypothetical, like, or whatever, where I don't love the direction this is going, but I wouldn't want the show to actually change for me. I'm just saying how I feel about it.
Right. And part of the fun of like watching art or entertainment or this is expressing your opinion about it. Or, you know, like, oh, this episode was this, or this felt that way. But like, you know, because Jamie will take some stuff to heart, and like she really will let some stuff affect her. And like I've said to her before, like I think she's a lot better now, but before I've said to her before, like, if you were driving by in a car and like I pointed to somebody standing at like a bus stop with 7 other people and I was like, you see that third person? Like, they don't like you. You'd be like, so? But when you read it on the internet, for some reason, it's just, and I've said to her, like, if you were in, let's say, Japan, and you were walking down the street, and somebody yelled at you in Japanese, like, you fucking suck, like, you're the worst actor, or whatever they would say to anyone, you know? Like, you're fucking terrible. Like, you would just hear a bunch of yelling, and you would move on with your day. But if somebody in America who spoke English said it to you on the street, it would ruin your day. And I said, they both said the same thing. Oh, the same thing just went down. Like, you just gave one more value because you understood it, because whatever, where I'm like, on the internet, when you see these comments, like, this should be another language to you. Like this, they're not speaking what you speak. Like, have you ever done that? You know, have you ever gotten some, and then she admitted she did one time. She hated a character on Big Brother so much that she like joined a Facebook group or some shit. And I was like, all right, well, there you go. You see, like, you're, that's, you know, funny. It's just like, you know, I think the big thing is like, we think sometimes when somebody says a hateful comment to us that like they're sitting at home all day thinking about it too. So that's why we should. But it's like, they're never fucking thinking about that shit. Like, people who do that shit, they and then they go to their next video to spew their shit on there, you know, to be like, oh, you fucking suck too, or like, well, whatever. Yeah. And occasionally, does it bother you?
I've gotten a lot better. It used to, so my first exposure to it, I was on the Adam Carolla show for a number of years, And that was like suddenly, because before that I had done some TV stuff and I had, done an internet show, but it was like always at a certain level. And then all of a sudden I was like in front of a much bigger audience on the Corolla show. So that was kind of a like trial by fire thing where I, over the course of the years there, learned to not really I went from it really bothering me to letting it roll off. For the most part, I'd say I let a lot of it roll off now, but there are comments that will get to me for sure. And I know it shouldn't, but it still does.
Would it be dumb to share what bothers you now because then they could do it, or do you care?
Well, I'll tell you one where I was like, why? I wouldn't say it like bothered me, like made me feel bad, but it annoyed me enough that I responded. I was sitting there going like, why did this one bother me? So on a recent Monday episode, I had my husband on the show and we were talking about, the homeless situation. And I said, we were talking about homeless and how the term now is unhoused. And then it's like we were talking about why is unhoused okay when homeless isn't, and like some thoughts on why, like we were wondering, is there something about the term unhoused that is actually different than homeless? Because they seem like synonyms, but I think it's that the stigma of there's a stigma around the term homeless, so it's just unhoused is, blah, 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 kind of going into it. And really, like, it was not, we weren't sharing a judgment about the term shift. It was just questioning what it actually means, And then this guy left this comment that's like, it was really hard to listen to Urine Daniels Woke Off or Woke Fest, but he spelled it W-O-K. So first I'm like, Walk Fest? What is he talking about? And then he said, it's hard to listen to Urine Daniels Walk Fest about homelessness. And for some reason, it just really like irritated me, I think, because it wasn't a woke off or a woke fest. It really was about the meaning of the words. So he misunderstood what we were talking about. And that's the thing that always like really annoys me. Kind of like what you were saying, Rob, about the like stupidity of some comments.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not what we were talking about though. So I just responded and I said, why is that? And he hasn't written back. But I was like, why did I choose to respond? Why did I let that bother me? Like I was exercising when I got it. And like, I almost wanted to like get off the bike and go to my computer and respond. I'm like, why? What is going, I don't even know the answer. So it's like kind of arbitrary which ones will get to me, but it's usually when I feel like someone completely misinterpreted what I said.
Yeah, it's tough. And I also think there's obviously like, I remember one time, my dad was visiting me and I hadn't, now I'm like, I try and work out 5 days a week. You can't tell by looking at me, but I do.
You look pretty fit.
Oh yeah, thanks. So my dad was visiting me and I hadn't been to the gym in like 6 days. And I don't even remember what it was, if it was like a comment about something or whatever. And I remember I read it and I was like, I felt myself getting all like fucking angry. And it took me 2 seconds to go, oh, I haven't been to the gym in 6 days. Like, that's what, like, I don't care about what, I don't care about this fucking, and also I think it helps, like, I grew up in New York City. Everything that anyone, like, we've had some episodes with, 250,000 people and all the bad things they could say about me. It's like, oh, my best friends have already said that, I'm like, and I've said it about, like, I remember, basically every time I do something, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and it was like, in the beginning of relationships, people put on that like front, right? Of like, I want to, like, he was saying that that's what people do. Like, they want to be their best self and they're trying to like that. And I told him, I'm like, that's weird because physically I do that, right? Like, I want to like, I'm not going to eat sugar so that maybe I look better, or like I'll do the tongue scraper and like I put deodorant on right before I leave and cologne and like,
right.
I want to be so fresh. And then 2 months in, I'm like taking a hoodie out of the hamper and like throwing it on to go over. But I think, as far as like personality wise, like within 24 hours of talking to a girl, I tell her all the worst things about me. And I don't know. I heard somebody say one time why, and it really clicked with me. And I forget if it's like a defense mechanism or you don't want them to find out about it. I forget exactly what it was, but it clicked, and I wish I remembered. But
is it testing them? Like, this is all the bad stuff around me. Will you stick around through it?
I don't know, because you don't know them, right? So like,
Right.
Why should they even stick around? I think it's or maybe it's a thing of like, I'm beating you to the punch. Like, so I'm not going to be vulnerable for you to maybe say like, hey, your tone gets out of line sometimes. Like with what, like I say,
Right.
it, like I meet a girl like an hour in, I'm like, oh yeah, watch out for my tone. Like, like it can be like sometimes I eat one meal a day. Like I do that. Like people say intermittent fasting, but like I've always just done that. And, so sometime around 4:00, like you'll get out, like somebody will be like, oh, are you hungry? I'll be like, I'm fucking starving. And then like, they're always like, oh, okay. Like they think that like we have to hurry up and go eat. And I'm like, no, that's just me telling you. That's my way of saying, yeah, I'm hungry too. Like, there are times where like, whether it's being from New York or always being around my friends and we were all loud and like, and yelling and this, that, like there's times where I don't realize the emotion I'm putting behind something at all. And I think a big part of like, fixing that or even dealing with that is now that I'm just aware of it, where before when I was like 23, I had no idea that sometimes I was
How you're coming off.
Yeah. Where now, like, I know. So when people say that to me, I'm not like, no, you do this, like,
Right.
I'm like, oh, I probably was, like,
Right.
yeah, I was probably being a little, intense there,
Well, speaking of intense, do you need to tell anyone to go fuck themselves in a segment we call Hey, Go Fuck Yourself?
Yeah. So listen, I'm especially at this point, like if people don't want to wear masks, I'm fine. I respect that. If people want to wear masks, I respect that. If you wear a mask and pull it down to speak and then put it back up, you are a fucking idiot. You are just a and I don't mean like one time you did that, then I'm a fucking idiot. Because I go to the casino a lot to play poker, I see people who, when they're quiet, they leave their mask on. And then as soon as they have to say something, they pull it off. They go, yeah, how much did he bet? And then they put their mask back on. And I go, what do you think the mask is? Like, what are, and that, again, that's one of those things like the comment where I'm like, this person is so stupid. I don't want to be at the table with them because, and again, it's not like if somebody's like, what? And you pull it down because they can't hear you. I get it. Like sometimes you have to pull your mask down, but there are people who every word before they say it, they think like, let me pull my mask down. That shit drives me nuts. Oh, hey, people who pull their mask down every time they speak.
Hey, go fuck yourself.
Perfect.
Told them off. Do you happen to have a just me or everyone?
Yeah, so that's basically my whole life.
Okay, so
is it just
perfect? Okay, hang on, because we have a song.
Sometimes I ponder on something I have thought or done. Is it just me or everyone?
Okay, let's hear you just me or everyone.
I think I can't sleep at night when I watch a reality show and I see people come home from flying on an airplane and get right in their bed or put their suitcase right on their bed or are wearing their shoes and they jump in bed. And I go, ooh, that is insane. Like if I'm dating a girl and she puts her suitcase on the bed after coming home from like a trip, my mind explodes. Like I just can't, and it's not like I get angry. I'm just like, does everyone not think this is gross? And then people go, oh yeah, like why, like why is that a thing? I just find it like it was in the luggage thing with everybody else's luggage. It was in the back of the cab. It was in the like, who knows where it was. Then it was in the hotel thing. Then it's like, it's so the fucking wheels literally just did like 30 miles through this trip of just everywhere through. And then like, and it's the same when people, like I remember watching the Jersey Shore back in the day, and Snooki would go to work in her slippers, and then she would come home, jump in bed and go to sleep. And I like, it's worse for me than like seeing, like when people are like, oh, when I see someone throw up, I feel like I need to throw up. When I see somebody get in their bed with dirty slippers on, I can't, like, I don't even want to go get in my bed because I think my bed's dirty now. Like, it really does. It fucking drives me nuts.
That's a good one. I don't have that one so much, although, because I never wear shoes or slippers into bed, but I will put my suitcase on the bed to unpack it. I really shouldn't. I mean, now I will think about that. Yeah. There are certain people who won't even sit on their bed even if the bed's made, they won't even sit on it in outdoor clothes. Is that like you?
Hi. Yeah, that's me big time.
Wow.
Yeah. And girls always think it's a move, you know?
Like we only get in bed naked like that or something?
Yeah. Like I'm like, no, we can't, we don't go from the Uber back to my place to the bed with our clothes on. Like, I'm like, that's just, but I'm not like that with like my couch or like, they're like, yeah, whatever. I don't care what happens out here. But like, just there's something about when I go to sleep, I like the like white sheets, white pillowcases. I just want it to be like a clean place.
So do you make your bed every day?
Every day.
So once you make your bed, you don't ever sit on it or set anything on it or anything like that?
No. Not unless I'm in the same, like I just sleep in a pair of like bamboo shorts, like they're basically like wearing nothing. And if I'm like still in those, if I needed to sit on the bed for something, I would. But really, no, I barely even go into my bedroom once I.
Okay. Do you ever take naps? Oh, well, you mentioned opiates on the couch, but that was the old you.
Yeah, that was the old me. But back then I didn't care about any of that stuff. It was all once I got sober. I was like, because you're like, you're turning the dimmer down on everything,
Yeah.
Like when you take 15 Percocets, like somebody could walk on you with their sneakers and you're like, oh, okay. They roll their luggage up your face. You're just like, all right. You're like, yeah, like, everything's great.
Tony, what about you?
I've never really thought about it. I definitely will throw my suitcase on the bed with no thought whatsoever. When you first started all that, I thought when you said something about like get home from the airport and just get in bed, I thought you were going for the like you need to like wind down for a while once you get home, because that I was going to identify with. But the stuff on the bed, no, I'll kind of put, I mean, not anything on the bed, but more or less.
Yeah, sometimes I'll set my purse on the bed and then I quickly flash through all the places my purse bottom has been. And then I think this is pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't handle when girls do that. But you know what else? When I first heard that statistic, I remember it was a big thing, like for like a month, when it was like they find out the bottom of a woman's purse is dirtier than. And it was like all this stuff, like a toilet seat at a giant stadium, and like all this stuff, that the bacteria they find. But I thought they meant the bottom of the inside of the bag. And I was like, what are women doing? Like, and it was like every woman's purse has this. And I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? It took me like, it was a very dumb thought of mine. But then after a while, I realized, like, I remember like putting something down one time and it all clicked, It was like a movie where I was like, oh, the bottom of the bag. Like,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. What are your best, like, is it just me or everyone's, or some of the best that you think you've heard in the past?
Oh gosh. Well, the segment started because I lived in New York for a period of time. I was in Brooklyn and I was walking in my neighborhood and I heard a fire truck go by and I thought, I wonder if it's headed to my apartment. I wonder if my apartment's on fire. And then I thought, every time I hear a fire truck, I have that thought. Is that everyone or is that me because I'm neurotic? So that was the initial one. And then some of the early ones that regulars on the show would have was like, I like riding on the subway. Sometimes I'll put on headphones, but I'm not listening to anything, but it's just so I can eavesdrop. I feel like that one's pretty common. One that I think of often that was not mine. Someone sent it in, but I do this. When you're at a restaurant, you figure out what you want, and then you close the menu, and then the server comes by, and you have to open the menu again.
Yeah.
Right, or even more so when
That's
I'm
like
at a
100% of the
restaurant
time.
and I'm looking at the menu and I'm just like meeting new people and everything. I'm really not looking for what I'm going to eat.
Yes.
Like I'm just looking at the words on the menu. Like I don't even.
Yeah, there's usually, I find in that situation, there has to be a like, okay, let's figure out what we want to order. Like a cease conversation. I'm the same way because I can't multitask. Okay, let's just do a couple of the Just Me or Everyone's that people sent in. And I take Just Me or Everyone's on Twitter. If you have one you would like to submit, tweet it to @ariynbf. Okay. Phil Scroggs. Tweet it to @ariynbf and use the hashtag JMO, JMOE, Just Me or Everyone. Phil Scroggs says, I have a box of toothpicks in my kitchen junk drawer that is so old I can't remember how long I've had it. Yes. Did toothpicks really have a moment in the 80s or something, and that's when everyone acquired them, and they've just been sitting there ever since? Because my parents definitely have ancient toothpicks in their drawer, too.
Yeah, my grandfather, he passed away, but I was going to say he couldn't live without toothpicks. Like he couldn't get through a single day. And I think he would decide if he liked a restaurant we went to by when you're walking out, if there was a little thing of toothpicks to take for free. And he'd be like, that place was good. And I'd be like, what do you mean the food sucked? He's like, I got 87 toothpicks when we walked out, you know? But one time we went, and this is like classic Pop, my grandpa, we are eating Thanksgiving dinner, time for coffee, and somebody got coffee. He didn't, but they brought out the thing that holds all the sugar, and it was like the sugar and the raw equal, whatever, sweet and low. And he's talking totally casual Thanksgiving, like reaches into the sugar. He grabs one of the sugar and the raw, the brown ones. He folds it up and he starts picking his teeth at the dinner table with it. There's like turkey grizzle like coming out on this thing. There's like stains on everything. We're all looking around going like, oh my God, like Pop is so nuts. And he takes the sugar and puts it back.
Oh my gosh.
into the thing. And I would always let my Pop just do whatever. But that was one time where I yelled at him. I'm like, Pop, because we would go early for him to eat. I'm like, someone's coming in here after us and you're going to ruin their Thanksgiving dinner. Like they're going to take that out of the thing and there's going to be like gizzards, on the fucking sugar and the raw. And he would tell me, he would say things like, one time my sister caught him brushing his teeth with the hand soap. And when she said something to him, he said, it's all the same.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was his answer to like everything. Like you're putting the sugar back. He's like, it's all the same. Like,
That is amazingly gross. And yet it seems like and yet brushing his teeth with hand soap, like he was interested in hygiene.
Oh yeah, just he was like a real. He did some of the crazy shit. Like he was like a guy in the army, so like he really knew how to rough it. But then I remember like he wouldn't shave unless he put the shaving cream in a pot first on the stove with water. Yeah, and made it warm. But he would get the pot boiling, and then he would take the shaving cream canister and put that in the pot. And as he got older, there were all these marks on his ceiling from when he would forget that he was boiling the shaving cream in the pot, and he would just go like watch the Yankee game. And next thing you know, there was like an explosion. So there were all these like yellow gross stains in his kitchen from all of the shaving cream.
Wow.
And he was nuts. Yeah.
Is that a Just Me or Every Pop? Like, have you ever heard, Tony, or have you ever heard of someone heating up shaving cream? Rob, do you know
No.
anyone else who ever does this?
Never.
So I always thought it was insane and unique to my grandpa. But then I remember like being on a plane one time, and you look through that catalog, and there was a thing in there that was like, oh, shaving cream warmer.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And I'm like, so I guess some people do. I think they do that in like the old school barber shops where they use that like straight razor.
Right.
And I think
sure
he
it
wanted.
I'm sure it would feel good.
Oh yeah, I think that was like the one fancy thing he did in his life. Like he would make beef stew and throw like a whole London broil in there. Like he wouldn't even cut it up. But like somehow he needed warm shaving cream.
Right.
I don't know. I can't explain it.
Rob, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was so nice talking to you. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. You're just going to have to come back is all there is.
Of course.
Because there's so much more to talk about with you. Reminder to everyone, if you would like to see how fit Rob is, I'm trying to think of other visual. Oh, and his Zoom background, youtube.com/Alison Rosen is where you can see this episode. Also, I'm on Patreon, patreon.com/Alison Rosen. All sorts of bonus stuff there. Bonus weekly episodes, Zoom parties. There's a level where you can text me and I'll text you back. You can submit questions, which I have questions and we didn't get to them today. So I suck in that regard, but you can submit questions, which we usually get to. You can submit carbs that I call people on the Thursday show. All sorts of fun stuff. Patreon.com/Alison Rosen. Also, I am on Cameo. And also, if you like what you're hearing, please make sure that you're subscribed or you're following the show in whatever app you listen to. Please leave us a nice comment on Apple Podcasts. It helps people find the show. Tell your friends, etc. Rob, tell people where they can find you. Plug anything you'd like to plug.
Yeah, I have a podcast. It's called Pajama Pants. That's it. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We're on, I think that's it too. We're Apple. Yeah, where you could, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And it's, I think just Pajama Pants or Pajama Pants Podcast anywhere.
Awesome. Tony, what about you?
Just Twitter and Instagram at Tony Thaxton, and my podcast, Bizarre Albums, every Tuesday.
All right. Thank you so much. Listeners, thank you for listening. You matter. I love you. Goodbye.
Hey, do you know about the Alison Rosen show? We had a good time.